So please put your hands together for our lovely Matilde Martin.
Thank you, Deb. Wow. Has anyone been here all day? Yes. I know that I'm going to go home and I'm going to feel just so inspired. This day has been absolutely amazing. There's a story that my dad likes to tell. When I was a toddler, we lived on the outskirts of Copenhagen in Denmark, in the countryside. There was a large expanse of farming land and forest, wide open skies, a real idyllic scene of country living. My dad tells a story of a curious and a slightly relentless child, me, wanting to explore a local wheat field. He said that day after day I would run up to the edge of the wheat field as though I was being pulled by something. My dad, being a responsible parent, would stop me until one day his friend said, "You should just let her go." And so he did. Everyone was really intrigued to see what it was that I so desperately wanted to do or see in the wheat field. So my dad followed close behind as I just charged through what must have been an expansive forest when you're about this high. He said he could follow the top of the wheat moving as I was trudging through until the movement stopped and he ducked down to see what I was doing, and I was just sitting. I wasn't laughing, I wasn't crying, I wasn't lost and I wasn't playing. I was just sitting, completely surrounded by the natural world, a very content little human being. This story always makes me smile because it still describes me to a T. Give me a plot of nature to plonk in and I am completely set. It rejuvenates me, it fills me with peace, and it reminds me how important it is to connect with other living things. My name is Matilde Martin. I have a degree in interior architecture and what some might describe as a fierce passion for the environment. So when I was introduced to the theory of biophilia, I knew it was going to play a really big role in my life. Biophilia. Bio what? Well, I'm glad Fido Green introduced it earlier. Bio meaning life or living things, and philia sort of being the opposite to phobia, meaning the love of. So simply put, biophilia means the love of living things. Edward O. Wilson, a very famous biologist, and Stephen Kellett, a revered social ecologist, joined forces in the 80s and popularised the theory of biophilia with their book, The Biophilia Hypothesis. Both Wilson and Kellett really saw the power and the importance of this theory. And if I'm correct, I think they actually dedicated their entire lives to researching it. The theory states that humans have the urge to affiliate with other forms of life. The urge to affiliate with other forms of life. So we need to be surrounded by living things. And if that's the case, I think I'm set. With over 40 houseplants, 3 guinea pigs, 2 strangely tame currawongs that visit me on my balcony, a partner and 2 stepchildren, I actually don't think I could fit another living thing in my apartment if I tried. So when we talk about biophilia being a theory that can be implemented, we often describe it as biophilic design. And biophilic design relies on principles that we would experience in the natural world. So principles that you and I might not be particularly conscious of, but they do make a really big difference. As things are mostly well understood in threes, I will break them into 3 categories. The first is nature in space. And nature in space, and this is a good example, refers to the physical presence of nature in our spaces. So it can be animals, it can be vegetation, water, it can be feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin, or it can be having natural ventilation and being able to gauge the changes in the day. Nature in space. The second one is nature analogues. And nature analogues refers to anything that represents nature. So it can be materials such as wood or stone, it can be shapes and patterns, organic forms, or it can be things that actually try and mimic something natural, like this. Sort of looks like a treescape. Anything that symbolises something natural. Nature analogues. And then we have nature of the space. And nature of the space relates to things that we would experience in the wild. So large, expansive views, and even places of safety and refuge. And when I talk about safety and refuge, in the wild, this could be a cave or a tree. But in the built environment, I think the best way to describe it is, when you're trying to run across 4 lanes of traffic, and you've got that little mound in the middle of the road, and that's called a refuge island. And when we talk about design, it's kind of the same idea. You want somewhere where you can just sort of duck out of the way, take a breath, think about where you are, recalibrate, not get in anyone's way. It could be a room, or it could simply be a little bench on the side of a hallway. Nature of the space. So when these categories are implemented and we're really using biophilic principles in our design, we can come out with some pretty incredible spaces, such as this. This is an amazing project. It's a co-working space in Hollywood. And just straight off the bat, you can see that they have used really amazing organic shapes as their roofs. It almost looks like a tree canopy. And when you're walking through the space, you are actually completely surrounded by nature at all times. When you're inside the rooms, you've got natural materials, large, expansive views. I actually do want to work here. This would be amazing. Or something like this. This is actually my favourite building of all time. It's called The Mountain, funnily enough. And it's a bit more of a literal interpretation of biophilia, literally plastering a mountain on the edge of a building, which is quite ironic because this is in Denmark, and I think Denmark is the flattest country in the world. But the most amazing thing about this building is this is the back of the building, and the back of the building faces the city. And I flew all the way to Denmark to take this photo for you. And the front of the building, where everyone's windows are, faces nature. So every single resident is facing away from the city. They have large, expansive views of nature. They are completely surrounded by natural materials. And each resident, although you can't see it so well in my photo here because it's the middle of winter and very cold, every resident has their own garden. So when you think about a residential space and the power we have as designers if we're implementing these sort of principles, wouldn't you want to live here? It's just incredible. Another example is this, and this blows me away. It's actually a building that is not built yet. This is an architectural render. It is going to be Whale Tail Museum in Norway. It's set to be built in 2023. And here you can see it literally looks like a whale tail coming over the ocean. It's like an artwork. But I think what's even more impressive is the way they're going to use materials. So you can see here it's actually almost difficult to see where the building starts and ends. It's this incredible sort of symbiosis between the natural world and the built world. Inside, they're planning on using natural materials, large, expansive views and organic curved shapes. This is going to be a really amazing building. Well, this is all great, and they all look really nice, you say, but let's get real. Thanks to Fido Green, I get to work in a space like this, but it would be fair to say that most of us have spent or maybe are spending time in buildings that are almost the opposite to what I've just shown you. Did you know that Australians spend on average 90% of their time indoors? I'm going to let that sink in. 90%. What's even scarier is when we're travelling to and from these indoor environments, we're not really driving through the countryside. Our commutes look a little bit like this, or this, or this. So I challenge you to stop and think for a moment. What is the lack of biophilia in our day-to-day lives actually doing to us? Well, who here has been stressed before? I was going to say, you best raise your hand. Humans are actually really fascinating because we can make almost an endless list of things that can make us stressed. Be it jobs, financials, family. Are you running late? Are you hungry? Are you hangry? I know that my mum can spot from a mile away whether she should approach with caution and a snack before even attempting to talk with me. But how often do we put it down to our designed environments? Stress does weird things to us. Like, have you ever been in a supermarket during peak hour? You reach into your pocket and a receipt falls onto the ground. And in any other scenario, you would just bend down and pick it up. But in this moment, there are people everywhere. There is nowhere to just step aside and seek refuge. The light is artificial and bright and unflattering, and the surfaces are plastic and shiny. The air is thick and there are people everywhere, and in that moment, you leave your rubbish on the ground. Why? Because stress actually disengages our brain cells. So when we're stressed, we're actually less likely to make logical and well thought out decisions. Terrifying. Or what about this? I'm just going to lock myself in this room until it's done. Has anyone else done that when they've got a really big deadline coming up and you just lock yourself in the room and you just stare at that computer screen? Or maybe you've got a nice wall as a backdrop. Or maybe this is your office. I used to really think that looking out of a window or engaging with anything else would really result in procrastination or distraction. And although office design has come really, really far, the history of office design tells me I'm not alone. Look at this. This actually terrifies me. Rigid, straight lines, really strange repetitive patterns, artificial light, bland colours, no vegetation, no natural stimulation, absolutely no life. And if I worked here, I know I'd be a little bit like this guy. Because rooms that are designed like this actually increase mental fatigue. They actually increase mental fatigue. So not only is this guy's job harder, but at the end of the day, when we are completely mentally drained, not only is this going to affect our productivity, but it actually affects our ability and our awareness. It affects our ability to think clearly and creatively. I'm sure many of you can relate. Unlike today, when it's a nice, warm, sunny day outside, and you go into an underground tunnel, or maybe it's one of those badly designed offices with no windows, and you later emerge to find that it's raining, or it's really cold. I know that I feel an immense sense of disorientation, because there's something deeply not right about being unable to gauge the changes in the day. And I can't gauge the changes in the day if I can't see or feel or smell or hear the outdoors. There are some interior environments which shield us from the outdoors in such a way that we can actually no longer connect physically or emotionally to nature. And it just isn't reserved for the indoors, because we've all been here, the concrete jungle, and apart from some pretty aggro and stressed people that are there, this designed environment doesn't remind me of a jungle. Yes, there is architectural history and beauty here, but it's cold, and it's brick, and it's concrete, and the buildings are so big that they shadow each other, and you get no natural light on your skin. And they're placed in such a way, and I'm sure many of you can relate, that there are these really uncomfortable wind tunnels in the city. And in most of these streets, there's nowhere to comfortably stop and seek refuge. It's been theorised that the less we actually engage with the natural environment, the stronger the disregard for the natural environment. And the stronger the disregard, the less likely we are to feel responsible for it. So in other words, less nature equals less interest in nature equals less caring for nature. I'm calling this the equation of death, and it's the scariest thing I discovered in my research. Well, that's really depressing. So how do we remedy this? Well, my theory is that if biophilia can at least negate some of the negative side effects we feel from these sterile environments, then we'd be giving ourselves and nature the best possible chance of thriving. So luckily for us, having access to vegetation and natural light and natural materials, curved organic shapes and views of nature, places to seek refuge, these have all been shown to lower our heart rate and our blood pressure. These design principles actually make us less stressed. There was even a small study done on 100 participants, and their stress levels were tested. They were exposed to differently designed rooms, some with biophilic principles and others with no biophilic principles. The study concluded that patients had a positive and significant reaction. So they felt less stressed when they were exposed to the rooms that were designed with biophilic principles. They said that it significantly lowered their heart rate in the first 4 minutes of exposure. 4 minutes. And if that isn't exciting enough, we know that when we're not feeling stressed, we're more likely to make logical and well thought out decisions. Biophilia has actually also been shown to improve cognitive performance. So having the presence of nature in our lives can actually make us think more clearly and perform better. Having access to a horizon, being able to gauge the change in weather during the day, or even having access to vegetation. This looks familiar. We experience what is referred to as mental restoration when we have access to all of these principles. And mental restoration actually improves cognitive performance. Mental restoration improves cognitive performance. So if we implement biophilic principles, we're more likely to give ourselves the best possible chance to make us more aware and think clearly and creatively. Now we all remember this, the equation of death. Less nature equals less interest in nature equals less caring for nature. So what happens if we reverse it? The last and possibly the most exciting thing that biophilia can do for us is reconnect us emotionally with nature. And I believe that when we feel emotionally connected to something, we actually feel responsible for it. For a simple example, like if you have a house plant you really love, or even a pet, and you feel emotionally connected to that thing, and then you feel responsible for it. And how cool would it be if we all felt responsible for the natural world? In fact, there are a few studies that say that I'm correct, because in 2019 there was a metadata study, and it concluded that they had a positive and significant association between the connection to nature and how people felt responsible for it. So the more connected people were to their natural environment, the more responsible they felt for it. So bringing nature back into our lives can allow us to create have this positive emotional connection to nature every single day. And will allow our children and the next generation to stop reserving this type of connection for family holidays or the weekend. It's actually been shown that children that develop a positive emotional connection toward nature when they're little are actually more likely to feel responsible for it in adulthood. So I think that research backs up my hunch. If we surround ourselves with nature, it could directly relate to how inclined we are to protect it. And then the equation would look a little bit more like this. More nature equals more interest in nature equals more caring for nature. Because nothing good comes from being stressed or mentally fatigued or completely disconnected from nature. So let's harness what biophilia can do for us. It will benefit us in more ways than one, and it will benefit the environment. We need nature in our lives. We need biophilia. We all feel the pull. I know, in one way or another, we are all that little determined toddler at the edge of the wheat field, craving the natural world. Thank you.
Isn't she gorgeous? So tell us, Tilly, I know that you didn't want questions and answers because she said I can't answer everything. But what's your role here at GWA?
I am a flagship consultant.
Yeah, what does that look like?
That looks like helping people design their bathrooms. So they come in with their plans and their parameters they're working with, and we help them pick out what will fit in their bathroom, kitchen and laundry.
And in terms of using we talk about biophilia and biomimicry a lot.
We do.
Because of our built environment, but also from an organic perspective. As a designer, and you're an interior architect by trade,
correct.
How do you implement your craft and using biophilia and biomimicry with creating pods for clients or creating bathrooms or kitchens for clients?
Yeah,
how does it manifest at Coalface?
Yeah, good question. I really love when clients come in with a mood board and sometimes you'll have them roll their eyes and they're like, oh, we don't like Pinterest or whatever it is. But I really like helping people figure out what it is that they're actually wanting in their bathroom or their kitchen or their laundry or their entire house. And then what I actually love about this space is they come in and they're all completely awestruck by the design of this building, the amount of plants, and sometimes we do snip some off and let them take them home. But I think it's just a process of nutting out what it is that they want and then putting it all back together with biophilia.
Something that we do also talk about is human behavioural analytics and design, and how we need to live behaviourally differently. And we follow processes when it comes to bathrooms. We have some of our toilets are 15 centimetres higher in order to accommodate joint movement for getting up and sitting down. For architects in the house, you know all about the movement and behavioural design. So it's lovely to also be bringing biophilia and biomimicry and human behavioural analytics into our design. As mentioned, we do have 5 interior designers on staff at come at no cost to the end user. And if you're architects or designers, that means you can bring your clients in here and we can do the designing with and for you and short-circuit the process. And, they are exceptional. We're so proud of them. Put your hands together for Matilda. Isn't she awesome?
Thank you.
Awesome.